Hi, I'm Eli, and I shoot Micro Four Thirds. Hi, Eli. Skid aside, I absolutely love the Micro Four Thirds system. It's, I think, the most fun and versatile photography system there is out there today. In the world where Canon isn't allowing third-party lenses, I just think it's really cool that this collaboration between Panasonic and Olympus, and a few others as well, exists. So I have a few reasons today why I love the Micro Four Thirds system, and I'm just going to share them with you. Reason number one is size, and yeah, you look at the new G9 or the OM1 and you're like, size? Really? The bodies are massive. The bodies are massive. The lenses are tiny. Here I have a 12-60 on a EM5 Mark II. 12-60 in full frame terms is 24-120. That's a pretty tiny lens for that focal length. If you were to compare this next to the Canon kit lens, like the 18-55, I'd say they're about the same size, and you get a lot more reach with this lens. And there's even smaller offerings. There's the kind of famous pancake zoom, the 12, no, what is it? It's the 12-32mm by Lumix. It's not quite a 24-70, but it's essentially a 24-70, right? Then you have the pancake primes. So you have the 17mm by Olympus, you've got the 20mm by Panasonic. Really small, tiny lenses that, yeah, will look a bit comedic if you stick them on a G9 or like one of the bigger bodies. But if you were to pair it with something like this, you'd have a camera that pretty much fits in a pocket. Not everyone's pocket, but certainly a pocket. I'd probably get it in this hoodie if I tried. So reason number two is video. And I know what you're thinking, video, really? Micro Four Thirds, yeah, it's a tiny sensor. It doesn't do well in low light because you have to raise your ISO and then you get a bunch of noise. But I feel like these companies were like, people have to raise their ISO and it leads to noise. What can we do? What if we got them to lower their shutter speed instead? But then the camera photos would be blurry. Stabilization. The stabilization in most Micro Four Thirds cameras is fantastic. So if I look at this EM5 Mark II here, right? I can intentionally be shaking this camera, but the second I push down the shutter and the stabilization kicks in, buttery smooth. On my G9, where it's got the stabilization as well, with the sensor, like the actual sensor moves, and I pair it with this lens that has in-lens stabilization, I can handhold a shot for 2 seconds and get a decent exposure. I can get fake dolly-like shots just by like carefully walking with the camera. No gimbal needed, no dolly needed, no fancy anything needed, no fancy grip. The stabilization is just amazing. Whether you shoot stills, that's going to be handy in low light, and if you shoot video, well then, stabilization's always handy. Reason number three is adaptability. So the Micro Four Thirds sensor is small, but because it's small, the distance from the back of the lens to the sensor is not a lot. Which means if you're adapting a vintage lens or a lens from a different system that needs to be further away, that's pretty easy. Most of the time, if you can't adapt a lens to your camera, it's because the lens actually needs to be further back than the camera will allow. So if you're trying to adapt to full frame or even APS-C, that's a problem you can run into. Micro Four Thirds, not really. This is a Helios 44-2. It's an old vintage lens from USSR. They even filmed a bit of the Batman on this lens, right? I got this with a film camera, dirt cheap. Film's really expensive, but I love the swirly bokeh you get from this lens. This is a €12 adapter that lets me take this old lens, I screw it in, and I can attach it to a camera and I can use my cool vintage lens. You can get adapters for Canon, for Nikon, for any old system you can imagine. If you go on eBay, there's people selling old CCTV camera lenses that they've adapted to fit this system. I don't think there's many lenses out there that can't be adapted to work with this system. And yeah, that's kind of true for mirrorless in general because your sensor is now much closer to the front. But because the sensor's small, you can move further away or move closer and it's fine. TLDR is most lenses can be adapted to work with Micro Four Thirds. Reason number four is just the community. I have yet to see a community for pretty much any hobby that's as welcoming as the Micro Four Thirds community. I think it's just the acceptance of the flaws of the camera systems. Like, yeah, we know they don't do great in low light, but hey, look at this astrophotography I did. Or, hey, yeah, we know they're a bit small and dinky, but look how much stuff I can fit in my camera bag. And if you go to any kind of Micro Four Thirds Facebook group or forums or whatever, you'll have people that own $2,000 cameras and with a $2,000 lens attached to them, right? Congratulating someone on taking a photo they took with a €100 used camera and a €6 used lens. And it's just a really wholesome community. It's just quite refreshing to see. The last reason I love this system is affordability. If you want to get into Canon's mirrorless system, right? You need to buy their is it the cheapest R? It's like the RF or the RP or whatever, right? If you want to get into Sony, yeah, there's a few more budget options. Nikon, there's a few. They're not that budget, right? Like it's not, even if you go back to the EF kind of big DSLRs, the budget options are just not great. Whereas I picked up this EM5 Mark II for €230 used. This is weather sealed, does 12 megapixel stills, does 1080p video. It's got amazing stabilization. It's tiny and it has live composite mode, which means I can get some cool images like this. That's crazy affordable, and that's just camera bodies. If you look at lenses, you've got all these incredible lenses. This 12-60 or 24-120 full frame, weather sealed, 58mm thread, which is very handy because they're like the most readily available filter. Pretty cheap. It's not like with other camera systems where, I'm just gonna keep using Canon because it's the system I used to shoot, right? If you, let's say you go all in and you buy yourself a fancy Canon R body, no money for lenses, or you've only got a couple €100 for lenses, then you need an adapter. Then you need to buy cheap EF lenses. I went all in and bought my G9, right? I put nearly all my funds for camera into the G9. Didn't have much left for lenses, picked up this 12-60, it's phenomenal. The used market for Micro Four Thirds, because the system's been around for so long, is just vast. And as well, there's all these third-party manual lenses, right? So 7 Artisan, is it 7 Artisans or TT Artisans? It's one of them. Laura, there's all these third-party lenses and adapters and that for these cameras, because I don't know if the actual system's open source. I'll have to check. Editing Eli can put a thing. But it's just a really budget-friendly system. So if you even go to YouTube, right, and you look up and it's like, oh, this €200, well, dollars wouldn't it be? This $200 street photography camera is amazing. Chances are it's a Micro Four Thirds camera. I just love the system. I get it's got its flaws. I get it doesn't do well in low light. Maybe I'll do another video like this where it's like 5 things I don't like about Micro Four Thirds. Because there's a few things I don't like, but for stills, for video, I think they're fine. And yeah, they're low megapixels. The new G9 Mark II, right? The newest Micro Four Thirds flagship, 25 megapixels. That's as many megapixels as you can fit on this sensor. But you know what they did? They improvised. They worked around their challenges. They made it so, now it has 100 megapixels handheld high-res mode. So it moves the sensor to stitch 100 megapixels. This camera can do that. It can do, I'll have to check. I think it's a 50 megapixel high resolution file. The G9 can do 80 megapixels. And when you combine that with Lightroom super resolution, you get some fantastic, massive, but fantastic files. What do you think about the Micro Four Thirds system? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you not see the appeal? Do you think we're all a weird cult in the corner of the room just kind of eating glue? Let me know in the comments. And if you like the system and want to see more content about the system, give me a subscribe because I'm rolling full steam ahead with content about Micro Four Thirds and camera gear in general. Cheers.